Every now and then there's a story or at least a headline that you see that makes you look at it and go, no, that can't be. And this is one of those for me. So this is a story, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show, where it says that apparently, according to a study, a majority of Quebec teenagers are in favor of a complete ban on cell phones at school. And that includes, by the way, during breaks and lunchtime. And of course, when I saw that, my initial reaction was that can't be because we know these kids typically can't live without their phones. Turns out it's true. Dr. Samuel Veissière is an adjunct professor of psychology at UQAM. He is on the line to discuss this story and the research behind it, if you will. So Dr. Veissière, thanks for being on the show.
Hello, it's a pleasure.
Let's begin by talking about how he came up with this, because I know it does involve interviews with, I think, about 500 students through the course of, a tour through Quebec. So give us the details, if you could.
Yeah, it's a really interesting finding, and let's hope it's representative of a broader sample. 500 teenagers is not that much, but they did survey, teens in schools all across the province, from Greater Montreal to the Côte Nord. And I will say, I was partly surprised by the finding, as someone who's done a lot of research on the impact of mental health, of screens on mental health. But I was not that surprised, because it confirmed a hunch that some of us and the research and clinical community have, which is that the younger kids from Generation Alpha may be a little fed up with growing up online. So, a lot has been said about the so-called internet generation, iGen. So those are the kids who were born after 1994, who grew up entirely online. And it's a generation that has, very poor mental health. And a lot of, not very fair or nice things have been said about Gen Z, that, that they're snowflakes, or they're fragile, and, they went through a really rough time during the pandemic. So we know for sure that, the mental health of young adults and teenagers is not very good, but much less is known about Gen Alpha, because it's not actually easy to do research with young people. It's difficult to get consent. But just from clinical evidence, a lot of us are seeing that the younger kids seem to be a bit more reflective about it, realizing that maybe their generation has been really missing out on something, missing out on face-to-face interaction, spending too much time online. It's a generation that's more sort of savvy about mental health questions. So it was really refreshing, to see this finding from the survey.
Can you just actually contextualize when you talk about generation or Gen Alpha? Who are we talking about here specifically?
We're talking about the under 18s.
So I guess when I hear that, I think to myself, well, does it go even younger than that? We know kids at 9, 10, 11 are doing this already as well. Are they involved, or were they involved in this?
No, unfortunately, they were not. And a lot of work, needs to be done on that. I mean, there was a report in La Presse as well that reported on really sort of worrying symptoms from very, very young kids. We're talking 3, 4, 5-year-old kids, who grew up hooked to tablets and seem to have a lot of difficulty relating to the world. So we're hoping that more and more research and actual guidelines, pediatricians' guidelines come out on responsible screen use for kids, from birth, all the way to 18. But, this is already like a move in this direction, with schools thinking about banning cell phones,
right.
Discussion of a minimum age for social media, discussions about healthy screen time, and again, involving youth in this conversation and seeing that a lot of young people themselves, are asking for these kinds of directions. They're asking for this kind of support from the adult community, to kind of unplug a little more.
I wonder how much of this, if we can even measure it, has to do with the fact that we know cell phones have been officially banned in the classroom, at least here, since January 1st of last year. So these kids have not had the chance to go ahead and do it. And I wonder if over the course of that year, they've learned, I can get along without this. It is not that important.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the findings, the conclusions probably go beyond the findings of this survey. And if you were to ask kids if they wanted also more opportunities to spend time offline, to do sports, to have, unsupervised playtime, with other kids, they would definitely want that. There was a very interesting book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt that came out last year, and he interviewed, thousands and thousands of teenagers in the United States, and many of them said, I wish there were no social media. In particular, if other kids were also banned from using social media, then that would just be great, because we could go into being, kids.
It's funny, though. We're actually talking about going back literally a generation ago, right? When that's what we used to do in school. You couldn't have a phone. You didn't have phones. They weren't around 25 years ago necessarily. And we were forced to play and hang out and, at the end of the day, maybe go and involve in a sports activity. That seems like that's where we're heading back to.
Absolutely. And it also seems that a lot of the negative consequences of screens are not just from screens themselves and, more anxiety and more like body identity issues from social comparison on social media. It's also from all the things that kids get to not do anymore. Namely spending time outside, spending time with other children, developing empathy, learning to take measured risks and solve problems and develop resilience. It's really about the things, beyond the screens.
I wonder, too, given the fact that, as I just said, and you agree, a lot of this has to do with the fact that the government took the initiative and banned those phones. Should more be done here in terms of legislation? And if so, what?
Yeah, legislations are good, but just banning things without providing alternatives or providing guidelines or guidance is not necessarily going to help. So it's probably more important to develop better evidence-based guidelines for pediatricians, for family doctors, for school staff to communicate to children and families, and for families to be, in a sense, re-educated on how to raise children without having a screen, between people all the time.
We have some advice to parents here based on these findings. What would you say to them?
I would say, of course, try to maximize, quality family time as much as possible. Try to have some rituals at home, like, for example, no screens during family dinners. Have more family dinners. No screens in the bedroom. No screens 2 hours before bedtime. That's really important for sleep quality. And rather than just ban and judge, also show interest. A lot of parents really have no idea what their kids are getting up to online. So ask them, what are you looking at on social media? Do you know that there are algorithms that feed you things that you're interested in, but that, don't show you other things? What do you think about that? Young people really like to be involved in these conversations, to understand why they're being invited to use something less. And again, as always, provide more opportunities to do fun things offline.
Yeah, and also maybe as the parent, sort of take the lead and put your own phone down.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Dr. Veissière, I want to thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Have a good day.
Appreciate it.